Have you had your dose of pep today? No? Don't worry. I got you. Let's go. Hey. Welcome to episode 7 of the Pep Talk podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, and it's my pleasure to be here with you right now. I'm so excited, just so excited to be hanging out with you in this space that we're building together. Y'all know the mission of the podcast is to cheer you up and coach you on. I'll be your biggest cheerleader. I'll tell you everything that you're doing right. I'll hype you up like Flavor Flav, but I'm also going to coach you up and I'm going to challenge you to grow. I'm going to challenge you to elevate. I'm going to challenge you to hit that next level, y'all, because what is life? What is life if we're not constantly trying to get better, if we're not constantly trying to grow, if we're not constantly trying to develop? And so we do that by coming to you every Monday. And we're at episode 7 right now, and we're so excited, and we're dropping off that pep to your life because everybody needs some pep. Everybody needs some pep in their lives. Yo, I want to encourage you. And I want to thank you for continuing to listen, for continuing to review and to rate, for continuing to subscribe, and for listening on your favorite podcast providers, y'all. It means so very much to me. And I can't urge you enough to keep subscribing, to keep sharing the message, to keep sharing the pep, y'all, because what we're doing here is not just some flash in the pan, here today, gone tomorrow thing. I really believe that we are affecting lives. I believe that we're affecting lives. And so I want you to be a part of this mission of spreading this pep, of being people's cheerleaders, and of being their coaches and holding them accountable for using up all of the talent and potential that they have in their lives. Y'all, we are a bunch of pep dealers. You heard me? Are you a pep dealer? I bet you're a pep dealer. And if you're new to the podcast and are wondering what all of this talk about pep is, yo, just keep rocking with us. And I promise that you will get it. It's a movement. It's a family. Just saying. So here's a question for you. Do you know any good storytellers? Like, as I was planning out this episode, I ran into a student that I had 4 years ago, and he reminded me of something that happened in my class, and it just took me back. So as a teacher, I am apt to go completely off script and sometimes even off curriculum, especially if I see something's not working or if my students aren't responding in a way that I think. Because I like my classes to have some pep to them as well. Like even before this podcast, I like to keep them on their toes. So I remember that it was Halloween and we were trying to read, I forget what it was. Maybe it was the Odyssey. I'm not sure. And the students were just not into it. They didn't want to read anything about Odysseus and no Cyclops or none of that stuff. They were already thinking about like the candy they were going to get. And these are high school kids thinking about going trick-or-treating, getting candy, all the stuff that high schoolers might do on Halloween. That's where their minds were. And so I stopped and I turned the lights off and I said, okay, does anybody in here know a good ghost story? And at first they looked at me like, yo, man, what is this? A ghost story? We're not outside. We don't have any s'mores. This ain't a camp out, homie. What are you talking about? I said, does anybody know any good ghost stories? All right. So this kid, he raises his hand and he says, I have one for you. I can make one up. I said, you're going to make up a story just live and in person and color right now. And he said, yeah, mister, I got it. I said, okay. So he turns on the flashlight of his phone and he begins to tell a story completely off the dome. There is no paper in front of him. He's not reading anything off of his phone. He's just telling this story and he's crafting voices, and I'm going around the room adding little sound effects as he's telling this story, and it is creepy, but it is a masterpiece, y'all. When I say he rocked this story, He rocked the story. He brought it to life. Like his classmates gave him a standing ovation in that classroom and asked him for another. And I said, okay, man, go ahead, do your thing. And he told us story after story after story. Some were funny, some were creepy, but he was a master storyteller. And I asked him, I said, are you still doing stories? He said, yeah, Mr. B, I'm writing them down now. But he is an example of a naturally good storyteller. See, a naturally good storyteller, they don't just tell us a story, but they invite us into the world that they have crafted to take part in the message that they are crafting. Now, I say all that to say this. You're a good storyteller too. We all are. You, me, your mama, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your dog, your cat, they probably tell stories too behind their barks and their meow meows. We're all good storytellers. It is something that is built into the soul of human beings that we can tell a story. And while you may never tell a story to another soul audibly, you definitely tell stories to yourself. You craft stories that are simple, extravagant, true, false, based on fact, based on fiction. And these stories that we tell ourselves can be the most believable ones of all. But because of this, they can also be the most harmful. That's why today, I want to talk about some of the biggest stories that we tell ourselves, why they are so harmful, and I want to give you some counter stories that you can begin to craft to replace them with. So we'll be right back with the episode 7 of the Pep Talk podcast. It's getting peppy up in her. We'll be right back. And we're back. And today, just to recap, we are talking about stories that we tell ourselves that are harmful. And I'm going to give you some counter stories because I believe it's important that the narratives that we tell ourselves are factual, right? Because our narratives shape our perspectives. They shape the way that we perceive people, the way that people perceive us. If we have a negative narrative that people just don't like us, then we're going to be easily offended. And an easily offended person never gets anywhere in life. So our narratives, we have to learn to not let them shape us, but we have to learn to shape our narratives. And besides, if you're going to tell yourself a story, it needs to be a great one. It needs to be grand. It needs to be luxurious. It needs to be amazing because you are amazing. And your story, the story that you're telling yourself, it needs to line up with who you really are. And I'm here to tell you, it's time out for the negative, harmful stories. It's time to bury the narratives that are not serving you well. And it's time to tell yourselves the best possible stories of the adventure of your life. Okay, so here is number 1 in the harmful stories that we tell ourselves. I'm late. That's it. I'm late. And you may be sitting there asking, late for what? Well, that is the part that you have to fill in for. I know that I've often told myself, and I've often felt, even if I couldn't verbalize it, that I was late for something or that I missed something. It's like you're waiting on the bus, but, the bus is already gone. And so now you're standing there at the bus stop wondering, well, what do I do now? So, as I was growing up, my dad was very time conscious. And that is a trait that was passed on to me, and it's a trait that I've now passed on to my oldest daughter. That whole idea of being time conscious. And while it is a blessing to respect people's time and to not want to be late, it's also, it becomes very toxic because I hate being late. Like, I hate even feeling like I'm going to be late. It feels like, just bad juju crawling up my spine, and it makes me uncomfortable. And, I don't like to be late. When my wife and I were dating, if I told her that I was going to pick her up at 7 for a date, at 6 or 6:15, I would be sitting in my car outside of her apartment, just minding my business, waiting for 6:45 when I would, walk up the stairs and knock on the door respectfully. But I've always just felt, I've identified with the old adage that if you are on time, you're already late. And if you're early, then you're on time. Now, the toxic part of this, at least as it has played out in my life, is that, I began to judge my life based on a time that I had prescribed for myself or a season that I had prescribed for myself. And I'll give you an example. So when I turned 30, I'd always felt like God was calling me to pastor a church. And when I turned 30, I wasn't doing it yet. And so I felt like I was running late, and I could feel this anxiety about it. And I could look around and I can see other 30 and 20-year-olds who were doing that thing that I felt like I had been called and purposed to do. And it would make me angry, and I didn't feel like myself, and I didn't feel like I was good enough, like I had missed something, that I was late for something. And it just was not a good feeling. And I think that when we hold ourselves to these unrealistic, or maybe they're realistic for you, I don't know what your specific thing is, but I think when we hold ourselves to these chains of time, and we allow ourselves to begin to feel like we are late to accomplish our mission. We are too late to accomplish our purpose. We are too late in life to have anything to contribute in a positive fashion. We are too late for this or too late for that. I'm too late at 50 to become a millionaire. Oh my gosh, I'm too late for this. There are so many things in life to worry about without putting this burdensome onus of being tardy for whatever party. It's like FOMO, fear of missing out. It's like you've missed out on your life, or you feel like you have, but again, you're still here, right? And so as long as you have breath in your life, you're not late. It can still come back around. It depends on where your mindset is on this whole thing. But I don't want you to live your life placing that kind of pressure on yourself as if you're missing out on something because you're too late for it. Because that's not the case. And if you've been telling yourself this story, I need you to stop. You're not late. You're not early. You're on time. See, time is not yours to control. And rather than focusing on where you are in life versus where you think you should be, focus more on the moment. Focus on the particular moment in time and ask yourself if in this moment, you're doing everything that you can to maximize your skills, abilities, and talents. Are you loving the best that you can right now? Are you forgiving the best that you can right now? Are you developing yourself in this moment the best that you can? The past has already happened. The future has not come to pass, so all that we truly have right now is now. And I'm not telling you to never think about your future, but I am asking you to consider that if you take the moments and maximize them, even if it's only a 1% change in you from moment to moment and season to season, the future you've imagined will be even better than you can imagine. My brother, my sister, my friend, my family, you're not late. So here's a new story, right? Instead of telling yourself that you're late, I want you to tell yourself that you're on time. And I need you to say it out loud, like right now. Say, I'm on time. And say it again. And take another cleansing breath and say it out loud. Listen, life is such a gift that even as it changes from season to season, while we don't have control over much, we do have control over, how we allow our mindsets to develop. When you tell yourself over and over again that you're not late, that you're on time, it allows you to not focus on opportunities that are missed, but actually it allows your brain to begin to seek out opportunities that are there for you right now in the moment. It's not about the missed opportunities, it's about the active ones. It focuses your eyes to see open doors. It opens our hearts to see active connections. We better process what the moment holds, and it alleviates the stress. Telling yourself that you're on time presses pause on the horror that we have missed something life-changing and allows us to receive the life change that can happen in the moment. There is action also required with switching up this story. And that action is simple. Start. So number one, we are replacing the story that we're late with the story that we are on time, we are in season, we haven't missed it, the best is still to come. Here's the next one. The second harmful story that we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough. I think about the number of times I've said that over my life. I've told myself so many times that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough to go live on Instagram. I wasn't good enough to make digital content. Bruh, nobody will watch it. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. I'm not good enough for this opportunity, so I'll let it pass. I'm not good enough for this opportunity, so I'll let it pass. And you probably know this story well, don't you? I know I do. Like, have you ever stopped to wonder why you persist in telling yourself this false story? Why do we subscribe to this false narrative? I can look at research and know where it comes from, past experiences, trauma, things in our upbringing or relationships with friends. But honestly, while this list is endless when it comes to the stimuli for this type of story, really it just comes down to us having the mindset to even subscribe to this. Like, we all know people who are immune to this kind of thinking, right? They appear to be super confident. They don't believe that anything is too good for them, that they're good enough for everyone. But for a lot of us, whether we admit it or not, we fall prey to this narrative, and it keeps us from going after the things in this life that we are supposed to go after. Like, I'm telling you, this is Coach J talking to you right now, but I'm telling you that whatever the opportunity is in front of you right now, you're good enough for it. But it's not just going to lay itself down for you to obtain it. Like, you've got to work for it. You've got to grind for it. Eric Thomas says you like winners win. Winners look for the opportunities, and winners don't allow that doubting narrative of I'm not good enough to sneak in and sabotage, because that's what's happening, right? When you hear that narrative, when you buy into that narrative and you keep telling yourself, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, I'm not worth this, you're self-sabotaging yourself out of the very things in this life that are slated for you. What if? I don't know what you believe about what happens after we pass on. I believe in heaven. And one of the things that I've always thought about is, what if I get to heaven and God shows me this room where there's nothing but boxes with my name on it? And I look at God, I'm like, God, what are all these things? And he looks at me and he says, these are all the opportunities. These are all the blessings. These are all the things that I meant for you to do. The people that I meant for you to reach, the blessings I meant for you to give out, all of these things, but your mindset was all twisted. Your mindset was all wrong, man. You kept telling yourself that you weren't good enough, but I knew you were. And I guess that's what I'm telling you now. You are good enough. You are worthy. You are worth it. But it's a mindset thing that we allow ourselves to become so beaten down by the disappointments and the rejections. And I get it. I understand it. Yet even when we know that this is one of the most toxic stories we could ever tell ourselves, we keep doing it. It's like that safety blanket that we run to when we need to shield ourselves from the world. It's the friend, and I use air quotes there, that is always there to whisper in your ears, but they're not whispering words of comfort. They're whispering words that almost affirm the things that we fear the most. For some of you, it's like a preemptive strike that keeps you stuck in a single place in life. For instance, I'm not good enough, so I won't even try to go for that promotion. I'm not good enough, so I won't even try out for that solo, or I'm not good enough, so I won't even try to change careers, or whatever that thing is for you. We tell ourselves that we're not good enough. And this story is an example of what happens when our minds go overboard protecting us, right? And I've talked about this before, how neuroscience tells us that the way our minds are structured, it's always looking for risks and threats that could hurt us, and it tries to keep us from that pain or that discomfort or that heartache, whatever it is. And truthfully, the mind is great at its job, but it becomes overzealous because in its desire to protect you and be a great gatekeeper, it begins to formulate messaging that can employ at the drop of a hat to keep you safe. Think of it as automation, so that whenever you want to do something that is outside of your comfort zone, that story is automatically told to you. It pulls in your past failures and disappointments and reminds you of your despair when things you wanted did not happen. It does these things from a good, albeit overactive place. So in order to change this story, my advice is to question it. Here's what I mean. Whenever your mind begins telling you about how you're not good enough, I dare you to audibly ask, who says? See, for this story, for this narrative, you have to challenge it. You can't allow it to run unabated throughout your mind and throughout your life. Come back strong with force. And the new narrative, this new story that you should be telling yourselves, here it is. I have everything that I need to do everything that I need to do. Let's break that down. When we approach life from a perspective of lack, that we don't have everything that we need, that lack colors everything that we see, everything that we do, every conversation that we have, every thought that we think, every interaction that we have. When people are talking to us, we interpret what they say through the perspective of lack, that evidently something is wrong with me. Or if someone's trying to bless you, you're like, oh, they must feel sorry for me because I lack this. No. We're stopping that now. We are cutting off that mindset of lack. We are cutting off that perspective of lack, because when we shift the story, when we determine within ourselves to believe that we are not lacking any good thing within us, then how we interact with the world and with ourselves begins to be filtered through a healthy lens. So when you tell yourself the narrative, I have everything that I need to do everything that I need to do, and you keep drilling it home. No matter what you're experiencing, you keep drilling it home. You keep drilling it home. You put it where you can see it. You say it in the morning. You keep it in your wallet. You keep it in your purse. You put it on your desk. When you keep telling yourself the story that I have everything that I need to do everything that I need to do, that I have everything I need to do everything that I need to do. The more you tell yourself that story, the more your mind will begin to get it. And then you'll see those opportunities. You'll see those connections. You'll see those possible collaborations. Y'all, life, you have everything that you need to do everything that you're supposed to do in this world. You're not lacking. It's not that you're not good enough. It's just that perspective is crippling you. And as your coach, I'm calling you out, just like somebody had to call me out. And I am telling you that it is time to shift the narrative. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with episode 7, and we are talking about harmful narratives, harmful stories that we tell ourselves. We said earlier in the episode that everybody is a storyteller. And while we may not tell stories to anybody else, we are constantly, 100% of the time, telling stories to ourselves. Now, we can't allow those negative stories, those negative narratives to take root and to wreak havoc in our brain. And so far, we've talked about a couple of the ones that I think are the most prevalent. I'm late, as in I'm late for something. I'm late for an opportunity. I've missed a great season of life. And I'm not good enough. And as I'm sitting here looking at my notes for this episode, this could easily become an hour-long episode. I mean, there are so many. I mean, there's like, down here I have, I never do anything right. or I'm a failure. And there could be any number of other negative narratives that you're telling yourselves. And, as I'm thinking about this, here's what I want to tell you. We have to disrupt the negative narratives. We have to stop the negative stories. So I need you to take some time and to think about the negative narratives that you are telling yourselves. What are you subscribing to that is not helping you? What are you listening to on the inside of you from your mind that is keeping you stuck instead of allowing you to bloom and to flourish? Where are you planting yourselves? In what stories are you immersing yourselves that are drying up your root systems and causing your life to wither? Disrupt them. And while I could give you all of the alternate stories, a lot of this is something that you're going to have to take responsibility for and do for yourself. And I believe that you can. I know that you can. I have all the faith that you can. And even if you don't think that you can, I want to tell you to reach out to me. Shoot me an email at thepeppodcast@gmail.com or shoot me a DM on Instagram @_JBSpeaks. And I would be glad to speak with you more about what your limitations are, what those limiting beliefs are. Y'all, I believe strongly in what we've talked about in this episode. I believe that when put into practical steps, there's nothing in this life that you cannot accomplish when you're telling yourself the right story, when you are treating yourself like the best friend, when you are subscribing to positive stories and just allowing yourself feeling free to flourish. Y'all, we want to cheer you on and we want to coach you up. And so we want to see how these things are manifesting in your life in a positive way. Okay, we're at the part of the podcast where we have the quote of the day, and I have a great one for you that centers really in on what we've been talking about. It says, turn down the volume of your negative inner voice and create a nurturing inner voice to take its place. And that's by Beverly Engel of the Nice Girl Syndrome, Stop Being Manipulated and Abused. And I'm going to read this again to you. Turn down the volume of your negative inner voice and create a nurturing inner voice to take its place. I don't think I have anything to add to that. I want you to take it and apply it to your life in a way that's going to make you feel powerful. You better be your powerful self out there. There is a life out there for you to live. All right, so thank you all for, just episode 7. That's crazy, right? That's so cool. I'm so thankful for all of you who've been rocking with us from the beginning. If you've jumped in along the way, consider going back to episode 1 and catching up on the journey. Hey, I love you guys, and I want to encourage you to keep reaching out, emails, DMs, and I want to encourage you, I'm going to say it out loud, I need you to subscribe. Just subscribe, rate, review, share, comment. I'm just so glad to have you all here on the Pep Talk podcast. And hey, reach out to us again at thepeppodcast@gmail.com. On Instagram, you can reach me at _JBSpeaks. And on Twitter at Pep Talk Pod. Y'all, I love you. I hope this has been good for your heart, good for your soul, good for your mind. And I hope that you go through the rest of this week feeling fueled by the dose of pep that you've gotten today. I love you. I'll see you next week for episode 8 of the Pep Talk Pod. I'm your boy, Coach Jay. Keep it peppy. Later, y'all.